So, hi, everybody. I'm Christina, and I lead marketing and platform here at Village Global. And before Village, I was an in-house marketer at a number of B2C and B2B2C startups. And by far and away, my favorite channel was SEO. And so I'm super excited today to talk with Tarek, who's say it again, say your time messed up.
Tarek Elqoulaq, yep.
Elqoulaq, who is a data product manager at Power Digital Marketing, which is a growth marketing firm powered by technology. And before that, he led their technical SEO practice and worked with amazing brands like Dropbox, Spotify, Audible, and Paperless Post, which is where we met. Tarek is actually who taught me about SEO, but back then I didn't have AI tools to leverage. And so I'm really excited to learn alongside y'all today about SEO in the time of AI. Tarek is going to start with an SEO overview, and then we'll jump into Q&A. This masterclass, like all masterclasses, is meant to be tactical and interactive. So feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we will try to get to all of them. And with that, Tarek.
So thank you so much, Christina. Appreciate you inviting me to this. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Get started. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Look at that. Use of the logo, Tarek.
Yeah, I hope I used the right logo.
That's good. Look, see so much.
Cool. Cool. So just a quick intro of myself. So everyone, I'm Tarek. Right now, I'm a data and AI product manager. I work in the MarTech space. As Christina mentioned, I work at a growth marketing agency called Power Digital Marketing. I work mainly on like the data platform side. So really just powering like our 500 plus clients' analytics and trying to enable at scale kind of all the businesses that we work with to make data-driven decisions on how they can maximize their ROI for their marketing campaigns. That's what I actually transitioned into product management 2 years ago from SEO. So that's where my background is in SEO and marketing and consulting. So I've been an SEO and product consultant since 2017. I've worked mainly with different funded startups and also enterprise businesses. I've worked with Paperless Post, where Christina was at, but I've also worked with Dropbox, Spotify, Audible, some more like startup type companies like Noom and Casper. So that have a lot of different experience across different industries and types of businesses. Also, I love to do like side projects on the side. So I built actually my own affiliate website is one of them in the camping space. And I was able to drive 100,000 visits in under a year with just SEO. So that's something I was trying to do. I spent a lot of time like working on other business SEOs. So I wanted to do them for myself and also challenge the kind of narrative that SEO takes like a really long time. So I started a brand new domain and saw some success there. I also like to put some fun facts in this stuff. So fun fact about me, I actually a while ago before I even got into SEO, I had this like sports posters, like e-commerce business back when sports posters was a thing. People were buying posters. And I worked out with a buddy of mine who was like a graphic designer, and we were really into sports. So we built like NFL, like an NBA sports posters and sold them online. And eventually it got some traction. We like used Instagram and funnel traffic to our website. But eventually I got like a cease and desist letter from the NFL. So that had to I put a pause to that. But that's just a funny story there. But that's
Hey,
actually what got me into SEO was that experience. So
success.
yeah. Cool. So in terms of what I wanted to talk about today, so like high level, wanted to just first talk about like is SEO even a channel that maybe your business you should care about? I want to go through like some successful B2B case studies, like what can we learn, what patterns can we observe from companies, B2B companies specifically that are winning in SEO right now. And then also just give my thoughts on what I think the whole AI craze, like the world of AI and generative AI and what's going on there, and what it means for SEO as a channel. So cool. First thing to start, should you even care about SEO? So the truth really is, I think that actually not every business should spend time focusing on SEO for growth. It doesn't always make sense. I would see it a lot like I've primarily worked like agency side. So I've worked with a lot of different clients and businesses, and I've seen, unfortunately, from time to time, businesses that have no like business actually like trying to see wins out of SEO. So how can you avoid being in that position? Some high level, I would say scenarios or common scenarios that I've seen where SEO maybe may indicate that SEO is not really a fit for your business. One, I would say, is if you need to see results fast. So in startup terms, maybe if you have short runway, maybe you have like some time sensitive like deals or events that you're trying to promote to your customers. So any situation where you need to kind of like see results fast, that is probably a case in where SEO is probably not the channel for you to use. Another scenario could be if you have low search demand for your product or service. So there's some industries, customers don't use search engines as much to find products. It could be like security contract, like arms, weapons, like, industries where there's like a low demand and there's a high barrier to entry. And then another scenario is if you're like trying to compete in a very, very, very competitive or sensitive market. So Google treats certain industries differently. So like in the finance space and the health space, they're much more picky about who they rank. And it's much more of an uphill battle to rank in those markets versus others.
Rick, what is YMYL?
No one's in.
Yeah, YMYL stands for
Perfect.
your money, your life. So this is just like a acronym that's used that basically indicates these industries could have like a big effect on someone's like well-being. And so that's why the content related to those topics are classified as YMYL, and that's why they're taken a little bit more seriously by Google. Cool. So if we take a step back and talk about like what are like the reliable paths to really accelerating customer acquisition, we talk about growth and specifically about like accelerating user acquisition. What's the commonalities we see between any company really that sees growth and sees it at scale? It really is going to come in one of these paths if we're talking B2C. It's going to come in the form of like performance marketing, so paid advertising, so like Facebook ads, running Google ads, that type of stuff. It could also be virality, so maybe like you blew up on TikTok or something. And then also there's the content path, which is where SEO falls under, right? So you're producing content and this content is driving you traffic to your website or to your application or whatever. And then if we want to talk B2B as well on this, so B2B just add two other paths to this, which is the sales path, right? Inbound or outbound. And then also there's partnerships, right? So most recent one is OpenAI and Apple and their partnership to integrate ChatGPT into the iPhone, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a bit here. But basically the question you want to ask yourself is, does the content SEO path really make more sense for my business than these other reliable growth paths? Because every business that sees repeatable growth, it's in one of those paths. So some will see it with content SEO, but some, based on their market, based on who they're targeting, based on the business and the nature of their product, just makes more sense to go other paths. So the key takeaway really with all this is, before investing in SEO, before building out a team, or before engaging with a vendor to work on SEO with, validate really the opportunity that it presents for your business. Validate that there really is a market, that there's demand, that you have the timeline works for you, and all that type of stuff. Cool. So that's
quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just quickly, are you going to talk about ways to validate that it would work, like how to get early signal that it's somewhere you could invest? Are you going to cover that?
We could talk about it in the Q&A. I don't have it in this
Great.
presentation. Yeah, I tried not to go too tactical with this because there's a wide audience and there's like people at different levels. So I'm trying to talk about topics that like have like a high possibility of like being relevant to everyone as much as possible. So, cool. But definitely could go over that afterwards for sure. So, what can we learn? What patterns can we observe with what's working right now in B2B SEO? So just take a step back again. Really, like every time you're not ranking for a keyword in SEO, it's going to have to do with one of these three reasons, at least one of the three. It could be all three of them, but it's at least one of them. So either there's a problem Google's having with discovering your content, like it doesn't even know that your pages exist, or Google doesn't actually think your content that you built is relevant to the keywords you're trying to rank for, or there's like an authority aspect. Basically, Google just thinks that there are other websites, other brands that are more authoritative and more well-deserving of a higher ranking than you are, basically. So it's really important to understand, like, anytime you're not ranked for a keyword, it's going to be in one of these three areas. The like lever to pull on is going to be at least one of them, right? Maybe more. And really there are different patterns that you can see and look for that will tell you what lever you should pull on for your website, basically. So I've worked with, like I said, dozens of different companies over the years. And over time, I observed like these different patterns where I would see like different types of sites would have commonality. They'd have there'd be patterns in the problems that they're experiencing, like what's holding them back from rankings, what advantages they have over the rest of the people in their market, what opportunity really there is for them to kind of accelerate wins, right? So think about it in terms of like the size of the site and how long the brand's been around, basically. So if you have a large website, like think over 100,000 pages, you have a well-known brand, typically your SEO campaign is going to be more focused on like technical issues. So you're going to have you're probably experiencing problems around Google crawling all your pages and finding all of them. And you probably have a bunch of like pages that Google thinks are low quality. So the lever you'll pull is really on like the discovery and like the indexing relevancy kind of lever that we talked about. But you have certain advantages, like you have high brand authority typically, and you have the ability to rank content really quickly, right? Medium-sized sites are a little bit more tricky, actually. I'd say they're a little bit more like kind of case-by-case scenario, so it's harder to observe patterns there. But for smaller sites, which I would imagine most of the people on the call today are probably have smaller sites, less than 10K pages, lesser well-known, like brands that have been around for less time, that type of thing. Typically, the problem that those types of sites are experiencing is that they're not actually targeting their high priority keywords with content, and they don't have a lot of authority in the eyes of Google. So the ranking authority and the like indexing kind of relevancy levers are going to be the ones to pull on. And your advantage is that you have the ability to concentrate all your efforts on like a select few pages. And because your site's small, even ranking for a couple really high value keywords is going to totally change like your kind of growth numbers. So that's going to easily impact there. So I guess the whole kind of bottom line I'm trying to convey here is focus on what really moves the needle. It's like very common, especially for vendors in SEO, that will like give you a really long laundry list. You can use any SEO tool and get this really long laundry list of like a bunch of micro optimizations that you could do to like inch forward and inch your way towards, this success, basically. But from what I've observed, there's really like a handful of things that are really going to move the needle, and it's better worth your time to just focus on what moves the needle and not like random little things like page speed, for example. So one of the three companies I chose to look at was HubSpot. So what does HubSpot do really well? First of all, they do a really good job of like mapping their blog content to their product offering. So they have a sales section on their blog, they have a marketing section on their blog, they have a website section, and that all maps really cleanly to their actual product offering. They have a sales product, they have a marketing product, they have a CMS product. So they do a really good job of covering like the different aspects of the user journey with their content. They also put out these like custom landing pages or tools, and those kind of serve as lead generators, right? So they have this email signature generator page that drives over 100,000 visits a month. And they have these like course pages as well, that's doing really well. And this is working for them because it's like targeting a user segment that eventually is probably going to be ready to, work and use their products, right? So that's working really well for them. Vanna is another one I decided to look at. They're in the security and compliance space. So Vanna is interesting because they have a lot of technical jargon in that space. So they have this like glossary section, I think really maps well to like what their audience is probably searching for, which you probably have like this scenario you can imagine of like all those business stakeholders that know security and compliance is important, but they don't really understand what's going on in that industry. It's a black box for them. So they built out these glossary pages, and they're ranking well for them, and they're bringing a lot of traffic for them. So this is really interesting. And then also they have like these long form resource guides. So they have like this kind of, they're following the hub and spoke model where they have this like a plethora of content around one topic, And again, it maps really well to their product offering. So they have a SOC 2, you know, kind of like long form resource guide, and then that maps to their product SOC 2 offering, and so on and so forth. And then Amplitude, last one I looked at. So their blog, not as cleanly like structured as a HubSpot, for example, but they have really good user experience on their blogs. Really easy to skim their content and follow along. I think that's what's working for them on their blog and what's causing a lot of their success there. They also like Vena and like HubSpot. They have long form guides and glossary pages that they're using to rank. And again, they have these like tools pages similar to HubSpot. They're not driving as much traffic, but it shows like this effort on the Amplitude side to target audience or their users at like more middle of the funnel. So what is kind of like the takeaways from all this? Really, I would say number one is to have really have like a strong understanding of your target audience's entire buyer's journey. Like understand what they go through from like awareness to conversion, and then map that to how they would express that in search, basically with keywords. And I'll go over more examples here in a sec. But yeah, in B2B SEO, content production and creation, and content marketing in general is gonna be like the key differentiator really between you and your competitors and how you're gonna win. And I listed here some like common types of content that works well typically in B2B SEO. So for like bottom of the funnel, this would map to like comparison pages. So maybe if you're Zendesk, you're building out a page Zendesk for ServiceNow, or you're comparing like your service with theirs. There's alternative pages. On the middle of the funnel, there's like the buyer guides, kind of give like the high level overview of like a software product and how it works and what it does. And then the top of the funnel, which is like those what is pages, which is going to take users from like what is this to how will help me to how do I get started. So those are some like at a high level kind of types of content that's working for a lot of different companies in B2B SEO. Cool. So last part here is on AI and how really that is going to affect SEO. So here's some of my thoughts really what I think is going to happen. First, I think some context that help for if we're all kind of like on the same page here on like the context before generative AI really became a really big thing and what people in the industry were kind of thinking about. So over the past decade or so, I would say Google has been really trying to transform their search engine product really to becoming an answer engine, right? And generative AI specifically, because AI technology in general has already been being leveraged by Google for a long time. So the search engine is basically a recommendation engine, and they use like a machine learning model to produce the output that we see on the search engine results pages. But it's generative AI really, and the advent of that, and ChatGPT making it mainstream and making it like usable to consumers. That has really what's I think accelerated this transformation that Google's trying to go through. So what does it look like to go from search engine to answer engine? Basically, this is how Google used to look. So it had like 10 blue links, right? You'd search something, and if you want to answer, you have to go through one of these links basically. And it's really simple, right? But now we have like all these different kind of things that are going on and what we call the SERP, which stands for search engine results page. Basically, it's the page that you see after you search a keyword. Okay. So just starting from the left here, like you'll have this gallery of images. You have this what's called a featured snippet, which basically like answers people's queries usually without them having to click through any website. Map pack, right? Listing local businesses. The ad listings look like organic listings now. There's the people also ask box, the site links. There's all these different things now going on the search engine results page. Now, why does that matter? The reason is because the idea is that it leads to no-click searches. Basically, this is the idea of being an answer engine versus a search engine, is that you're going to have more people that search and they're not going to actually have a need to click onto any website. So that means no traffic for businesses, basically, or less traffic. So this was a study that was done back in 2018. So the data is pretty old here, but I did that intentionally to kind of show this is what people were thinking, or this was on top of mind. So if you were thinking about what's going to kill SEO, this would be on top of people's mind at that time. It was like no-click searches, and seemingly there was data that was coming out that was showing that it actually is increasing, right? So this is saying by February 2018, 61% of searches on mobile were not resulting in any clicks. and 34% on desktop. But it seemed to indicate like there's this growing trend you could see by the graph, right? More recently, though, there was a study by SEMrush, and they showed that zero-click searches are happening 25% of the time on desktop. So not like basically showing that, okay, it's not as bad as we thought it might get, essentially. But where does AI and generative AI come into play now is I think this is the new, like, kind of potentially could be the new threat, right? To like driving more zero-click searches. So they have this new SERP feature that they're calling AI overview. And that's kind of, I think, they're using generative AI technology basically to essentially what they're doing is they're using machine generated content to answer people's queries instead of surfacing human generated content like they have been doing for so long. So that's the goal with this. And what they're doing with AI overview. So the idea is maybe that this is the new like kind of thing that could cause more zero-click searches essentially to take place. I think the other thing too that this indicates with the whole AI overview stuff is just the top of the funnel and Google being a place to targeting the top of the funnel is just becoming more obsolete and more like more of a non-mover of the needle. So if you break down the funnel in a simple way of like awareness, evaluation, conversion, and you map that to, like, let's say you sell a digital marketing course, right? What is digital marketing? And you putting out content that's targeting that keyword would be an example of like top of the funnel content. That's the type of content that I think is becoming more and more obsolete, basically, at least with Google, at least trying to target it in Google. So these are the type of keywords that you could probably expect over time to drive less and less traffic. And what we're really seeing, like, and I'll touch more on this in a little bit, is that people are still using Google for the bottom of the funnel. So like for keywords more in the evaluation and conversion, but top of the funnel, this is where like the AI overview results are really like taking over essentially. And we're seeing more and more over the years, people are clicking less from these type of queries and they're doing more of this discovery like elsewhere outside of Google. So that's one thing. And kind of what we know so far about AI overviews is it actually didn't really work too well for Google. They rolled out a bunch of it back. So the beginning of the year, they were showing it around 64% of the time on keywords. So there's a 64% chance you'd see AI overview if you searched in the beginning of the year. Now it's only showing up around 8% of the time. So they rolled it back significantly, basically because they don't think it's as accurate and trustworthy yet. But they're surely going to like work on it. They're going to improve it and they're going to roll it back out. Because I think it's an integral part of their vision in terms of like Google trying to become an answer engine. So yeah, people not really feeling the impacts just yet of generative AI, but it shows what to expect basically in the future. Now, the one other thing I would say too is I personally don't think that we shouldn't over obsess on how Google is evolving its product to kind of understand I think what's really going to change SEO basically is how this new technology impacts consumer behavior. So like, for example, how does ChatGPT and the existence of ChatGPT change the way you use search basically? I think that's really, if you over index on that, that's where, I think that's where it's going to lead you to a better understanding of how SEO is going to change. So when I was looking into this before this, I found it funny how there was so much articles about Google's market share not being impacted basically from all this, which I think is a little misleading because ChatGPT and Perplexity and these other, assistant basically bots is what they are. They're not search engines. They're not trying to be search engines. So it's a little misleading to quote market share on search engines to try to show that nothing's affecting Google. Google is definitely being affected. People are definitely changing in terms of the way you could just use your own personal experience or maybe people that and subjective experience there. Like, I could say for myself, for example, I've definitely used Google a little less since ChatGPT because it works differently and it helps in different scenarios. So I'll go over that in a second. But I think another thing too that's really important is I touched on this a little bit earlier, but the partnership with OpenAI and Apple, like we're about to see ChatGPT be kind of integrated into our hardware, into our phones. That's surely also going to have a big impact on how much Google is actually used versus generative AI and working directly with one of these like chatbot type products. Some observations I'd say so far that I've observed in terms of how what like the trends are with consumer behavior and when it comes to search. One is that machine generated content is like actually becoming almost just as trustworthy now among people than human generated content, which is interesting. I think if you asked people a couple of years ago, they wouldn't trust machine generated content, but now actually with the outputs of what these LLMs are producing, it's actually pretty high quality for the most part. And what ChatGPT is really doing is they're automating that process of you filtering through the top results and like coming to an answer. So from that angle, it's surpassing Google in that sense. The other thing is a shift in how people search, like what people are actually searching and like putting in as inputs to these technologies. So before Gen AI, basically before ChatGPT, it was well known Google is not very good at answering what we call long tail keywords. So basically, like if you had this like really long-winded keyword or sentence that you tried to put in Google or maybe in natural language, it would return much less results, and the answers are typically less helpful, basically. And they also had less volume too. Like people, it was a fact that people didn't use Google that way. They didn't use Google to like express themselves naturally, basically. But with ChatGPT and Gen AI, I think that's changing. I think people are now using like they have these more like long-winded questions, and they're actually getting like accurate and helpful answers to those. That's something that Google without Gen AI is not really able to replicate with just kind of human generated content. The other thing is I think you're going to see an increase in use of voice assistants and chatbots, which is relevant because that means less traffic going to websites from searches. I think that's big with the partnership that they're doing, OpenAI and Apple. And then the other thing is, I think is the big one is how people discover content at the top of the funnel is changing. So it's kind of alluding to that slide I had before about the top of the funnel and how it's becoming more obsolete. That's only from a Google perspective, but search exists on other platforms too. It exists on TikTok, exists on YouTube, and increasingly people are going to these platforms to discover content that versus in the past where they would use Google for the entire kind of journey. And so that's really the shift I think that's really happening is that there's less like if you want to, buy new shoes for the summer, like it's more likely you're going to use another platform to start that journey and looking for those new shoes that you may like. You're more likely going to use a different platform than Google nowadays, but you're going to go back to Google later. And to complete the journey, you still will go to Google. You'll still, once you find the type of shoe that you want, whatever, you'll still end up on Google and you search for that reason. But like I said, at the top of the funnel, things are changing. So when we talk about the blog content from HubSpot, for example, that I was mentioning earlier, that's not necessarily something I would copy today or try to mimic today because that same behavior now I think is happening on different platforms instead of Google. And I think really the bottom line here is there's this belief that Gen AI is not going to plateau anytime soon. And I think if that's true, then these impacts will just continue to be felt and they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. And we'll feel it more in terms of like the traffic that we see and that type of thing. So I think that's going to be a big deciding factor too, is will this like technology actually plateau or will it continue to get better and better and better? So just a quick summary of what's kind of I mentioned all the kind of main points that I mentioned here in terms of impact on SEO for AI. First of all, there's two ways I'd look at like the impact happening or manifesting. One is going to be like how do search engines in general, like how does that product shift? How do they change? How do they adapt? But then also it's going to be consumer behavior shifts and trends. Like how do people act differently now? How do people use search differently? How does that impact the way target those people and try to bring them into our website? I think the more likely way that we'll see significant change is through these consumer behavior shifts and trends. The AI overview feature, not really impacting anyone right now, but has potential, carries risk if Google gets really good with their Gen AI technology to really actually drive a lot more zero-click searches. And then bottom line, I think with Gen AI, it hasn't like significantly impacted yet how people use Google to make purchasing decisions. So target if you're a business that sells white t-shirts, targeting like white t-shirts instead of targeting how to prevent stains on my white t-shirt, which is more top of the funnel, is the better way to go, I think. And the big theme here, I think, too, is just like SEO over geo, which is Google optimization. So instead of just focusing on Google, it's increasingly becoming important to focus or optimizing for other search engines. And I can say, admittedly, too, like I haven't focused very much on learning like algorithms behind search engines of other platforms. So if you have bunch of questions how to rank on Pinterest. I'm probably not the best person at this point to answer that. But I do know that what we see from like how people are acting, how people are changing, how people are behaving, they're doing a lot more search and they're using search functionality on these platforms a lot more, especially at the top of the funnel. So instead of solely focusing on your content creation, going to Google and seeing results from Google, think about how you build top of the funnel content for TikTok or for YouTube or for whatever works, whatever makes sense for your business, right? So yeah, that's about everything. I have my email here if you want to reach out, or you want to, I have my Calendly link as well. Anything on this presentation you want to talk about, or anything like that, more than happy to do that. My LinkedIn as well. And last thing, real quick, shameless plug here. I'm actually working on like an SEO analytics platform product. So my years of doing SEO, like one of the problems that I observed is really that it's really hard to get data analytics right for SEO. Data is like dispersed across all these different platforms and vendors, and you typically SEO teams don't have access to like engineering resources, like data engineering resources, and it's a ton of manual work to bring them all together. So there's this product I'm working on. I'll throw a link to the Google form if you want to show any interest and get notified about when we release it. But just wanted to throw that out there, something that I'm working on. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that, I can drop the link in the Zoom chat in a second here. But yeah, that is everything. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, please do. And maybe afterwards, or you can even share the link to the whole deck in the chat for people. Because you had some really good visualizations, especially that sort of top of funnel, or like the funnel graphic you had. And I think that relates to John's question in the chat. So his company Kickoff is a one-on-one fitness coaching platform, somewhat like Talent Hack, where you helped on the SEO side. They invested heavily and scaled their blog to about 40,000 monthly visitors a month and a ton of link building, but they haven't figured out how to convert them in a meaningful way. So he gave up, and he's wondering, is there any hope on that? And we actually talked yesterday, and my gut, and I'm curious your thoughts, was that they targeted a lot of like super top of funnel, like how to get lean in 9 steps, but not enough sort of in that transactional, like the two kind of bottom tiers of the triangle. But what would you say to John, who's like done SEO, but it's not converting to purchase or app downloads?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Top of the funnel is like it's a numbers game, you know? So you said you're driving 40K monthly visitors. That, like, I don't know, I would have to see the rest of the site, see how like massive opportunity that is for the business. But typically for top of the funnel, that's like you want to see in the hundreds of thousands, at least in terms of opportunity for it to really make sense to invest a ton of time. So yeah, it could be I mean, it could be tough for sure. That's why it's like, if you want to invest heavy in top of the funnel, there needs to be like a really big incentive in terms of opportunity, like search demand, for it to really make sense. There also could be like an issue with how you're trying to convert. So there's different possibilities there and what's happening, but there definitely is hope, because you have already, like, you've shown, you've proven that you can rank in Google, right? Which is, yeah, hi John, how's it going? Like, that's what I would say is the biggest takeaway. It sounds like your link building worked and your content worked to a certain extent because you drove the visitors. So I think you just move the focus to more middle, bottom of the funnel keywords, because you have a proof of concept. Like, you've shown that Google does like the site because it's ranking. So now you just need to shift focus maybe onto more, targeted, more high intent keywords, if that makes sense.
John, any follow-up?
Yeah, I think that's true for the most part, for most of and thanks, by the way. That the tricky thing is our number one term, that thing that we rank like top 4 and gets us most traffic, is how much should a personal trainer cost? Which really feels like it should be a winner for us, because we are way cheaper than everyone else and it's very high intent. And even that doesn't convert. They come to the site and they leave. So Yeah, I think we just haven't figured out the right offer to them. We give them a week trial, which is like the only time we ever give a free trial is to them, and it gets a trickle, but it's been frustrating. But I do believe it can work, but the devil's in the details probably.
Hmm.
I don't know. Like if you were me, how would you further investigate that maybe that particular item, that particular page in general? Maybe that's more useful for other people. If like you have a page that you really want to win that's getting a lot of traffic, how would you investigate it?
I would validate probably what the belief that that people are right there when they're searching that keyword. Maybe, maybe your audience is not actually in that state of mind. So you have obviously like an existing customer base. Maybe talk to them a little bit more about how they, reached to your company and when they were thinking about pricing or how much a personal trainer should cost. What stage were they at? How close were they to making a purchasing decision? Maybe there's some hypotheses there that you might want to like validate, I would say, speaking directly to customers. But yeah.
Thank you, John. And that's a good kind of note is we have hypotheses about where users are in the journey, and sometimes those things also have a lot of search volume, but if it's not close enough to the intent of purchase, then it doesn't translate into sales. So Ryan asked, can you share some thoughts on using Gen AI to easily build a volume of top of funnel content? This was a big question from sign up, which is like, can I use AI to generate a bunch of pages? I know there's a few founders on this call who I've talked to, and I said to them, I don't know, because when I practice SEO, like I had to have humans write things. And so my gut is like, is this sort of like the new keyword stuffing? Or Tarek, as you said in your presentation, like the content is pretty good. So if you can structure the outline, it's just like a hyper powered copywriter. So what is your take on using Gen AI to easily build like loads, volume of top of funnel content?
Yeah, I think there's some risk associated with it because we're so early with Gen AI and we don't know how the technology is going to progress in the future. Like how good is Google going to be? Because obviously Google wants to see human generated content. They want to own the machine generated content. They don't want for you to try to disguise, your human generated content as machine generated, because they are already investing in their own LLMs and they're trying to own the whole generating machine content themselves. So, but I will say for sure, yes, you can use AI to generate content. I wouldn't, because it's so early, I just wouldn't like heavily rely on it for like, if you have really important content that you're trying to put out, you're trying to rank for a really important keyword, then I would be more careful with using Gen AI for that and using AI for that content. But for sure, you can use it. I would just include a human in the process is my suggestion. So there's different services out there too that like there's one from Word Agents that I like to use or have used previously in the past. But basically they have like a human, they have like a service specifically for like human peer review or human reviewing of like AI content. So you generate the content with AI and then you have a human in the loop to actually review it, fact check it, edit it, and that type of thing. So I think as long as you include that in the content creation process, and again, you don't rely too heavily on AI for content production, then I think you're good for sure.
Wait, so Tarek, just I'm using kind of my own. Yeah, will you post the name of that service again in the chat? And then just to understand, like really tactically, so like back in the day, you would do your keyword research. Like I remember we'd use Market Muse. You would put forth like the H1, sort of the paragraph headers based on sort of a mix of keyword research, business insights, and then you'd give it to a copywriter and they'd write whatever, 1,000 words. Would you say like human in the loop, there's the editing, but on the front end, would you recommend people still being the human to like agenda that like outline that based on keyword research and business insight? Or do you think that like AI tools can do that step that humans also used to do. Like I get they're going to generate the copy like a copywriter, but would you trust them to outline it too, based on like them doing the keyword research?
No, yeah, for strategy, I would still definitely, you know, you could use Gen AI for inspiration, but definitely when it comes to questions about like what keywords you actually want to target, what content you want to produce, why you want to target those keywords, why you think that content that you are planning to create is going to work. These are all questions you want to answer yourself and not just like input into a chatbot for sure. I'm talking about using AI for the specific like content production aspect, and the strategy work that you do and the intelligence work that you do beforehand, you could just kind of use in your prompt engineering process when you're trying to feed the best prompt essentially for the AI to produce the best output.
Great. That's how I was imagining it, kind of like a copywriter, but you're still doing the strategy work. And
Yes,
one Edmund, who is in his company is in the behavioral health care space. So I don't know if that's in that, what is it, YMYL category, but he wondered if you had any good examples, and it's okay if you want to, if you don't have them now, if you come back, but any good examples of B2B to C SEO.
What would be an example of a B2B2C company?
Company Talent Hack was kind of that way, where like you're trying to get trainer, like in Edmund, I don't know if you're still here, but like I think what he means is they're going to get providers and providers get clients, or you
I see.
have like an intermediate.
Yes.
So we have a nutrition company, so they get dietitians, but then they also get customers who use the dietitians. It's kind of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's essentially, it's like going to the pediatricians who says, let me turn my video on. So, hey, Tarek, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. So essentially, we provide pediatric therapy for kids with the ages of 5 and 19. And parents typically go to pediatrician and say, hey, my kid has XYZ symptoms. And pediatrician can recommend, hey, you should check out the service. So it's a bit of a referral funnel that go B2B to C. So we would influence or educate the doctors and raise a profile with the doctors. So whenever there's a need for the families, they recommend us. Does it make sense?
Yeah, one company I worked with that I think falls under that category is Home Advisor and Angie, because they have like providers that they work, local contractors that they work with, and then they aggregate those contractors and then connect them to consumers. So they're a company I worked closely with for a couple of years. And they have a lot of good, I think, examples in terms of content that's working for them on top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel. They actually invest a lot in SEO, so they're a good company to look at for what's.
Sorry, which one was this? My Bluetooth, I got a call, so my Bluetooth got disconnected. So I apologize. Which was the name of the company again?
Home Advisor, Angie.
Home Advisor.
Yeah.
Angie. Okay.
Yeah, they're a good example for sure.
So
Awesome. Thanks.
that's related to another question from Portco FlexBot, who has a number of like different audiences. They have developers, they have decision makers and payers like insurance companies, all who could sort of use them. When you have, so in Edmund's case, it was like B2B to C, but also if you have kind of a multiple people who could be your decision maker, how do you prioritize those personas, or how do you balance that? Are you picking one? Are you trying to do content for all of them? Are you is it order of operations? So like, how do you handle when you have a few personas who you're trying to convince or attract?
Yeah, in that case, I'm definitely focusing more on the consumer end. I think like the process of finding partners or businesses to partner with in order to produce like your service or your offering to end consumers. Typically, from what I've seen from the B2B2C type companies that I've worked with, their content is very focused on the consumer end. And then the B2B aspect of it is more handled in different channels, through different channels.
Like sales or partnerships or something.
Exactly. That's just from what I've seen. I'm not saying it could exist for sure too. I worked with General Assembly, the course company. They have a bunch of courses. They had a B2B offering, but it for sure wasn't like their number one method of growing that offering was not through SEO. It was most of the content, almost all the content on their site was focused more towards on the consumer side and their offering towards them.
Cool. So one thing you said was, when you talked about, if you're looking at your site, like determining the issue, you mentioned that Google, like kind of ranks quality of page. So Edmund also asked, how does Google determine the quality of a page? Like if you're authoritative.
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors here. Basically, one of the things factors I put in the type of site column when I was going over different patterns was like domain age. But basically, it's really simple. I would say the way to look at it is how like well known is this brand in the real world. That's like a really easy indicator to use of like how authoritative Google probably sees the site too. Basically, Google wants to they want to reflect what's going on in the real world in their search engines. So they don't want like people to go to Google and then find a bunch of stuff that bunch of companies and business they've never heard of before or stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I think a really easy way to do this without any SEO tools or anything is just like how visible is this brand in the real world? How well do people know them? In general, like how much does their brand get talked about? That type of stuff is actually like definitely an indicator. I know this for a fact because I've worked with companies, I've consulted for companies that like saw a lot of virality for a time period. Maybe they blew up on TikTok or something. And then they actually, from that, because what happens is it drove them a bunch of branded search, basically. So it drove them a bunch of people going to Google and searching for their brand name. And that in turn helped them rank better for non-branded keywords in their space. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, like brand identity, brand like kind of like notoriety is definitely a big one. And then I can go into the more like specific like SEO known things like link building obviously is another one. But those are things you need like tools and stuff to really assess. But if you don't want to use any tools like that, just I would say look at how how old is it? How long has this company been around? How much is this company talked about online? How well known is this brand? What's their reputation like? That's like a good starting point for kind of getting at what companies Google probably sees or websites Google sees as authoritative.
So also if you have partners, like if you're doing work on the partnership side, I know this is something we would always try is to get partners to link back to us. So Edmund, I'm thinking like payer partners, sort of any validating sort of association. I'm thinking also of some other digital health companies on the call. Like if you have a foundation partnership, would you say link backs like that would help sort of verify or kind of show you to be official? Tarek?
Sorry, that question for me.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah. So if you
I was reading the chat, I was following up on that.
Yeah. If you had if people got partnerships and they linked back, because there's obviously like media link backs, but then also would that be another way to validate that you're credible if people who you partner with can link back to you?
Yes, that's a great technique too. I know we did that a paperless post for sure. So yeah, getting like partners or companies you have good relationship with to link to you on their blogs, on their sites, is a great way. Even just people talking about your brand, like just mentioning your company's name online, even not even linking to them. I think Google takes note of that stuff too. And they're increasingly, like I said, trying to take signals from other platforms and apply it to their platform. So if someone, if there's an article that blows up on Twitter and gets shared like a bunch, chances are that article is going to rank really well actually in Google too.
Cool. So Sean asked about, even with things like Apple and ChatGPT and AI overview, isn't it still important to create content to influence those sort of aggregated information? So CTR is going to drop in this one-click world, but don't you still want to be like in the top results of the Google, like the organic results under the AI overview?
Yeah, for sure. But you're just there's this the trend, the idea is that click-through rate is just getting smaller and smaller. And the idea is, like I said, people are actually not reporting a bunch of impact right yet on the AI overview stuff. But the idea is what happens if Gen AI gets really good and it gets really good at producing those snippets and those short answers, then what? You know what I mean? So that's the idea, is if Gen AI continues to kind of like improve, then I think the rankings underneath are going to become more and more obsolete over time. Again, this is just for like the top of the funnel stuff. We're not seeing like a shift really in how people work in terms of the more bottom of the funnel aspect of the funnel. And also like the actual, even if you are number one, you're still getting pushed back lower and lower to the page. There's still like all these different features that are still ranking above that you don't see for more like conversion, high intent focused keywords. So yeah, generally speaking, like I said, I would, it just depends on the opportunity. If there's a really, really high volume there at the top of the funnel, then you can make it make sense. If not, though, you could probably find another channel besides content SEO to capture that value.
So when you talk about transaction terms and sort of deeper in the funnel terms, a lot of the people on this call don't have big marketing teams. They might have a part-time marketing person. How would you suggest them discovering what those terms are for their business?
Yeah, the thing I always used to like to do was start from the product side. Like what is the product that you're offering? What are the different features and benefits and like functionality that you offer? And then work backwards from there. So that's kind of what I was trying to show with HubSpot, how they map, it very simply maps, like their blog categories maps to their actual product offering. You see what I'm saying? So if you start from your product offering and what you offer and the benefits and the features and that type of stuff, build out pages for that, and it might take a little work to kind of put it in keyword language, right? But you do that, you map it to a keyword, and then just work backwards from there and try to build content that leads someone to that ultimate kind of keyword there.
And I'll just add an example that I've referenced because I thought it was just like mind-blowing once I discovered it, was at Paperless when we were building out, we like had determined the business categories that drove our business, wedding, baby shower, because they had affiliate revenue. And we realized that like there were some keywords that had search volume, like baby shower decor, but those people could have already sent an invitation. And so actually I went to like the questions people would email us, like how, would you check my wording? And all of a sudden I realized there was this body of like how to word an invitation, like when should you send an invitation, sort of like the etiquette around it that was much closer to transaction time and kind of alluded to the fact that they hadn't already sent it. And so that became where I wanted to saturate, and then moved up the funnel, like, sure, we'll take decor and like games, but really thinking about what do we do for this customer and what are their concerns, their worries about that. And let's like go super deep on that and then go up from like, we'll just take all the content. But really, I thought that was like the game changer for driving actual transaction from the blog. And you were there for it, Tarek.
Yes.
So Patrick from Hillside Labs asked, this is like the silver bullet question, but any subtle or out of the ordinary suggestions for ways that people have used SEO to land customers that like are interesting that you would, I feel like there's like best practices and then there's kind of maybe things that we wouldn't think about, but you've seen so many companies. So anything comes to mind?
Yeah, the thing that for me at least, things that resonate for me more are like the scenario in which you have a smaller website, you have a newer website. Because I worked with a lot of bigger brands, and so it was hard to take what worked for them and try to apply it to like an idea maybe I had, because what worked for them doesn't work for me because I'm starting maybe a brand new website or something. So it's going to be different. What works for them is not going to work for me. One thing that worked was like a little thing I like to do with my affiliate website that I started. So I started this site in the camping space from scratch, basically. And one of the ways that I acquired traffic relatively quickly, like within the first few months, actually like meaningful traffic, was only targeting keywords where there were other new sites ranking, basically.
Hmm.
So looking for keywords, I did like this broad keyword research at first in terms of like the camping space and all the camping related keywords. And then from that, I would find which of these keywords has websites ranking on page one that were built like a year ago or 2 years ago. Right? You could like pull it from like a domain who is API or something like that, right? And so then you might have this list. You'll end up with this list of like all these keywords where there are websites ranking that are less than 2 years old, for example. Those are the keywords you want to mimic. Those are the keywords you want to like replicate and go for, because there's evidence there that Google is showing that it's willing to rank newer websites for. So the biggest thing, yeah, I would suggest is just try to like look for the websites that are the closest to you in terms of authority, in terms of like age, in terms of, you know, that type of thing. And then look for what's working for them and use that as inspiration. But that was something that was like the leading tactic I used to like determine what content to create. And it worked really well. So
Cool. Okay, so we only have a few minutes, so I want to do rapid fire questions to end. And everyone will get you the presentation so you have Tarek's information. I still hit him up sometimes when I have questions, so he's a great resource. And Power Digital Marketing, I worked with, really recommend them for an agency once you're in that place. So here we go, rapid fire questions. What is your favorite SEO analytics tool? I know you're building one, but until then, which one is your favorite?
definitely Ahrefs is the most complete, is the most holistic. I was when I was doing more consulting like in SEO, I was definitely on it every day. So for sure, Ahrefs.
What of their like packages do you think a funded startup should buy?
I'm not too familiar with their pricing packages, but just start with the free one. I think they have a free pricing plan. Play around with it. They have a really built out YouTube channel. They have a lot of videos on their YouTube channel. So they have a lot of guides on how to use it. I think that's a great resource to start.
So if I'm building a blog, a subfolder, like subdirectory or subdomain?
Subdirectory all the way. Yes.
What you said your favorite content tool is Word Agents?
I've used them before for like content production. And they have a service, like I said, for fact checking AI generated content. Yeah, that's probably my go-to.
When should a company think about hiring an SEO agency?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if this is rapid fire. I have thoughts on this, but I think the biggest mistake I see is people like going into like long-term engagements, really without validating the opportunity of the channel first. So something that I try to do like with my consulting offering is really focus on like short month-to-month engagements to start. Like spend a month, spend 2 months, like really deep diving into the market and deep diving in your competitors. Identify what actually a plan would look like. What actually does like a long-term plan look like a year? What am I going to do for a year in order to see success in SEO? And then hire, and then look for a partner, because then you'll know exactly what you need to do for them. Versus if you go to a vendor, especially one of these big agencies, what you'll see a lot of times is they'll have like a lot of, unfortunately, like cookie cutter like strategies and like deliverables that they'll basically apply to all their clients. That's not what you want. You want to come in more tailored and like knowing what you need, basically.
Awesome. Well, Tarek, thank you so much. This is so great. And I will follow up with everybody with your deck, but thank you so much for making the time to be with us today.
Anytime. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.